Welcome back to Chess for Sleep. Tonight, we're going to continue our preview series for the upcoming Candidates Tournament in early April. Tonight, we're taking a look at a game from Nijat, Abasov, and you might notice that Magnus in his game against Nijat actually won this game. In our previous two games, we looked at an all-time great game from Fide and also an immortal from Hikaru. So, isn't it rubbing it in a little bit to look at a loss for Abasov? Well, I think it's fair for a couple reasons. For one, Abasov only qualified because Magnus withdrew from the candidate cycle despite winning this game and thereby qualifying. Also, Abasov in this game gave Magnus a run for his money, and Magnus was actually totally lost if Abasov found a very nice queen move near the end of the game. Both players were down to about 10 minutes at that point, and from a game that had a 90-minute time control. So, this game was still a good display of Abasov's skill in what was an incredible tournament for him. So, I think it's worth looking at. Abasov, of course, he's the third-ranked player in Azerbaijan, behind Rajabov and Mamedyarov. He's the 59th ranked player in the world. So, let's go ahead and take a look at Magnus versus Nijat Abasov. So, Magnus starts with e4. We get a Sicilian. Knight f3. Knight c6. And now bishop b5 from Magnus. Magnus goes for the Rossolimo. The Rossolimo has gotten increasingly popular over the years as a weapon against the Sicilian. It's essentially an anti-Sicilian. White is basically playing a Roy Lopez setup against Black Sicilian, as opposed to going for more traditional open Sicilian lines. So, a couple ideas here for Black. Most common move for Black is g6, developing this bishop on g6. On g7. Here, from Abasov, we get e6, and this bishop can still develop here. But the idea is this knight can come develop to e7, and once the knight gets here, it's defending this knight. And now if white takes, Black's pawn structure is not going to be damaged. So, this is similar to an idea we see in the Nimzo-Indian. You can imagine if this was Black in the Nimzo-Indian, the pawn would be here, of course. But again, this bishop comes out, threatens to take and damage the structure. Of course, when you're playing the Nimzo as Black against White with the extra tempo, and the Reshevsky variation, White just goes for this, and you can't damage White structure. Here, since Black's down a tempo, as opposed to the Nimzo, White can go ahead and just do this damage. And that's what we see from Magnus. He goes for this and he takes. The most common move here is actually castling, letting Black defend this knight. And now rook e1 for White, because since we can't damage the structure anymore, against a6, White usually wants to just go ahead, retreat, and preserve this bishop on f1. Again, this is a maneuver that we see often in the Nimzo-Indian. But again, here, Magnus simply goes for this. Magnus goes for this damage, and we get b takes c6. In the Roy Lopez exchange, which this kind of resembles, usually we get d takes c6. Here the most common move, b takes c6. And black's threatening to build up a center. So now what for white? What do we play here for white? Well, kind of like the Nimzo, can we trade off that bishop? Then we start putting pawns in dark squares to have a harmonious bishop remaining. A bishop that's harmonious with the pawn structure. In the same way here, a common plan, simply to put pawns on the light squares. So that can be done with either the immediate d3 or b3. Here Magnus goes with b3. So this move, again, pawn on light square, marking out the c4 square for the white pieces. And also, of course, we're bringing this bishop to b2. So here, most common move, knight e7. But Abasov actually plays d6. And with d6, we're now controlling e5. The knight might have otherwise come to e5, and eventually, be exerting this continual pressure on this pawn, which could be uncomfortable for black. So Abasov simply controls this square, while also eventually, adding defense here, and maybe eventually this pawn will keep moving. Maybe, Abasov wants to build up a center, eventually just break through in the center. So d6 also provides a hook for white to undermine this center though. And that's actually what Magnus goes for, and it's the most common move in this position. e5 for Magnus. So we see if black pushes, we get something again that really resembles an Imzo-Indian, where this pawn is weak. It also resembles a French winnower, again with the doubled c-pawns. So here again we might eventually see the knight coming to a4 and harassing this pawn. Here, Abasov actually just goes ahead and takes. And the idea here, usually for white, is simply to immediately recapture this pawn and be hitting c6. But that's not Magnus's idea. Magnus doesn't want to recapture this pawn. Magnus simply continues putting pawns on light squares and plays d3. So now this pawn is stuck on this square. Of course it can't come forward. This bishop, of course, can line up against the pawn too. But in the meantime, black can simply go ahead and defend this pawn. And that's what Abasov does. He simply defends. So now, what's white's compensation for this pawn? How does white get his own attack here? Well, first, knight bd2 for Magnus. Of course, this knight has a couple of attractive squares lined up. Knight h6 from Abasov now. And with knight h6, this knight can now come to f7, where he's helping to reinforce this strong point in the black position. Also helping watch over this g5 square. If this g-pawn ever intends to make a run down the board, help, because there's this hook now with f6 played into the pawn structure. So also watching over g5. And now we see that's actually Magnus's idea. This whole idea, he's going for this kingside attack and just wants to push the g-pawn. So you might wonder, with this kind of early g-pawn thrust, is there any way for black to punish this punish white for ignoring his king safety, simply moving the rook over and pushing these pawns. Well, this isn't a novel position. There's no other position in the database for this position, Lichess database. What the computer recommends here is Queen A5. And with Queen A5, there's actually a cool idea in mind here for black. So, you might wonder, well, did black really stop this thrust? What if we played G4 here? Well, there's a really cool idea here for black, and it's simply to now play C4. And of course we can't take with the knight like we'd want to, because this knight is pinned. So, B takes, also D takes, and we get E4, and this would be very bad for white. And where else is this knight going? Right. So you have to take with the B pawn. So B takes, and now black does it again simply. E4, another pawn sack. Again, you can't take with the knight. So if you take here, well now look, it's just chaos with the white pawn structure. So now black's actually down a pawn, but you would much rather be black here because you just have targets everywhere. White has given up the bishop pair, and this is going to be, these bishops are going to have a lot of fun in the resulting position, and you really wish you could take these two moves back now and be able to castle, but you can't. So, Queen A5 immediately, a cool move for black to get some nice counterplay. Of course, pressurizing, making an attack on the other side of the board is the antidote for a flank attack. And it is kind of what Abasov does, but black doesn't use the queen. Abasov goes with bishop A6. And this is a logical move in its own right, because of course, the king might want to go to F1, and this bishop is simply eyeing this diagonal very ominously. But, again, there's no pin on this knight, so you aren't threatening, these very dangerous pawn sacrifices. So here, Magnus can simply continue with G4, and it's what Magnus does. So, how does black deal with this? Well, knight F7, and again, simply ready to hold down the fort, defend this position, this pawn, this strong point, G5, and simply ready to withstand this coming pressure that black is going to face from white's pawn thrusts on the king's side. So now Queen E2 for Magnus. And this move, of course, looks scary because this bishop still eyes the diagonal. But we see that there's no way for black to immediately open up this diagonal and get a tactic going. We also see that this queen could develop quite nicely to E4. So a sensible move. And now bishop E7 from black. Again, adding defense to this G5 square, but at the same time weakening G7. And now bishop B2 for Magnus. And we see that this bishop for now is blunted on this diagonal, but we could see how these pawn advances, H4, G5, ripping in to this diagonal, could quickly put black under pressure. Again, white gave up a pawn for this pressure, but we see that if some undermining moves can get in, undermining this diagonal could be significant compensation for the pawn. Might just be, might just be winning a pawn eventually in all of this. So now Queen A5, and again, we saw this idea earlier. It's not as effective now because white can afford to just let this queen, threaten here because we're faster now. We're getting in with our pawns. So white simply here has the option to play G5 immediately. And again, black isn't quick enough with this pressure. But it's not what Magnus goes for. Magnus plays what I would call a Magnus-esque move. And it's simply playing against this bishop. Again, we traded off our light square bishop. We have what is poised to be a fantastic bishop. So Magnus uses this move to go ahead and make sure that this bishop isn't doing anything. So he plays C4. So you see this move and you might wonder, is this anti-positional to have this pawn in the center, just a target, not able to advance, and on the semi-open file, queenside castles, and this D file is surely major trouble for white. But this pawn is not under immediate pressure. This bishop, however, is not going anywhere useful anytime soon. So Magnus decides that it's worth. There we go. Magnus decides that it's worth, leaving this pawn in a weak state, because you're basically shutting a piece out of the game. So black uses that tempo. Again, white could have played G5 there. So black gets G5 in himself. So stopping G5 for now, white still has the option of going H4, though, to pry open the king side. And that's what Magnus does. We see H4 immediately. And now H6 from black. And we see that, this king side can be pried open at the right time for white. And Magnus's next move, rook H1, again shows that this rook is under pressure now from 2 points. So it's uncomfortable for black on this diagonal, on this file. So how does Abasov deal with this pressure? Well, he plays the best move here, and it's simply to castle queenside. So now, again, you're ready simply to contest the H file if this position were to open up. Of course, getting your king to safety. And again, we're now hitting D3, which is going to limit this queen's options now. Note that, there's not likely to be a pin here that could be exploited on this pawn on the D file because, there's 2 ways you can recapture, so bishop sacking here is not likely to be helpful. So again, what is this bishop doing? I think Magnus is very happy to see this bishop shut out of the game still. So a couple different ways for Magnus to go here. The computer wants to go queen e4 and hit this pawn. Black basically has to play bishop e7, and again, this piece is a very ugly piece, but it's at least doing something here. Magnus actually castles himself, and you might be wondering immediately, didn't we just blunder this pawn? Well, the thing is, this attack now for white is actually winning. After h takes g5, h takes g5, and now queen e4. Again, there's no check for the king. There's no way to actually endanger the white king. So if we bring the bishop back, now queen g6, and we see that, again, this square, which we only opened up by playing e5 earlier, was now the key entry point into black's position. And this is now totally deadly. There's no way for black to hold this. If you protect the knight like that, knight takes g5. If you take here, you get this. And you can simply take, and now it's just totally over now. It's just totally over for black. So we see that there's an absolutely looming threat here after queen e4 for this queen to invade this pawn, this pawn. It's a lot of pressure that black is facing. So white queenside castles, and Abasov recognizes that he cannot take this pawn. He cannot simply win this pawn, which would otherwise be tempting. Instead, he simply retreats the queen to c7. So now if white were to try to come in, we're ready to defend the 7th rank. Now, with this move played, instead of the queen threatening to come in, we get the knight coming in to e4. And again, this square was always a logical destination for this knight. If we'd gone queen e4 instead, it's still a good move, but again, black's getting ready to defend and kick this queen out if it were to come in. So knight e4 here. So a couple different ways to go here. Abasov could have gone king b8, simply got his king safer. Instead, he takes on h4. And the idea here basically is to go ahead and take himself here, as opposed to letting white take at a time when it's most advantageous for him. He's going to simply resolve the tension himself, get this rook off the diagonal, and make sure that he's not crumbling tactically by white kind of initiating this capture at the wrong time and winning tactically on this diagonal. So knight takes h4, and we see the knight can potentially come in here. So rook g8, rook h to g8. So has black withstood this attack? Has this attack just fizzled out? There's nowhere for this pawn to go? Does white have a way forward here? Well, white's entire strategy, again, was to soften up this diagonal, and we have one more move in our disposal for that. Magnus plays f4. So again, we're allowing this pawn to live, actually giving up another pawn, but we're coming in now with winning f6, and things can get very dangerous for white. Also, this e6 pawn is very weak if this pawn were to move. So, again, Magnus's entire strategy in this game, making this bishop as strong as possible, making this bishop look as dumb as possible. So we see that here. Abasov takes. Probably better simply to move the king here. And this isn't nearly as good for black, because again, you're not dismantling this diagonal. Here we can take with the knight. And now white really doesn't have much. The computer gives this as dead equal. Certainly no kind of crushing attack for white. But Abasov does take, and he runs into complications very quickly. First Magnus simply takes with the knight, and now this is threatened. This rook is threatened. So, what do you do about that? You basically have to take this knight now. Again, with the two pieces being threatened. And this just gives up this pawn. Queen takes e6. After king b8, there's two captures here. Problem with bishop captures, you're hitting the rook immediately, but your queen is getting hit immediately as well. Not with the bishop, but with the rook to e8. And if you back up now the bishop, and all of a sudden white is retreating. Excuse me. You can take here, but after knight e5, all of a sudden black's position, this bishop is active. This bishop that we worked so hard to keep out of the game is now getting active. This knight is getting dangerous. These rooks are ready to come down. This all of a sudden, the computer says it's equal, but this could easily go either way. So the move here is queen takes. Again, no immediate rook tempo or bishop tempo, and we're pressurizing here and here. So Abasov is happy to see that his bishop is getting back in the game. And now we get rook de1 from white. So if we take this pawn, it's rook e7, and this is a huge problem. If we come back, yeah, this piece is gone. Yeah, and we finally win here. So centralizing this piece, keeping this rook here, where he's pressurizing this h-pawn. And again, this pawn is immune from now because, again, we're just threatening to come in on the 7th rank. So harassing the queen here. This, not the best move, although it's not clear Abasov really had anything better. But we see that this move from Abasov, now Magnus can simply take on f4. So let's go ahead and evaluate this position. Well, first we see, let's go ahead and have black capture here. So this was hanging. We get queen e3 from Magnus. Now rook e6, again winning this tempo. The queen backs up. So now let's go ahead and take a look at this position. So what do we have here? Who's winning this and why? Well, we still have this pawn as this weakness, but black has the 3 pawn islands. This king is weak, and we could see a scenario where this diagonal is dangerous, but not now. We see that these rooks are potentially dangerous coming to the 7th rank. This knight can come in and immediately be attacking this pawn. So, again, with the weaknesses in black structure, in the pawn structure, white does have a slight edge here. But again, there's room for tactics here, with it being so open and these kings being so weak. So Abasov has put himself in a position to win this game tactically, and that's exactly what happens. That opportunity does come. He simply misses it. We're almost to that point. So first move from Abasov, knight e5, again attacking. So now, with this pawn under pressure, this king being out in the open, you might be tempted to get this king over to safety. Here, we've got this tactic. And knight f3, and we've got this nice fork here. So, the move here to deal with that is actually the Magnus plays is king c2. So now it takes, you can get bishop e5 in first. And now, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's done for black now. It's game. So again, and if here, sorry, again, if we done this, takes, queen takes e5. And blocks up a piece. So again, there are dangerous tactics in the air here. Both sides have to be careful. So Magnus goes with king c2, and this is its own, this is nerve-wracking. With all you need is a rook coming to the second rank, and it's game over. If white is not able to contend with it. So king g7, black takes care of his own king. Rook e3, and again it's feeling a little shaky. White is fine here, according to the engine, but these pieces are not exactly well coordinated. This bishop is still nice, but you can't feel, you could see a piece dropping for either side here. So now queen e7, lining up on this piece. And now knight f5, hitting the queen. Knight's no longer under fire over here. And now queen g5, and that supports the rook into g2. So again, we're okay for now, we can block this. But again, it's just clear that tactics could spring up at any time. So Magnus here goes ahead and takes. And again, it's an understandable decision as time was getting low for these players, that this knight, again, has potential to unleash tactics that could be devastating to white. The computer actually wants to go with this. And here, trade the queens, allow this, no, sorry, not that check. Excuse me. You get this check in first, d1, h takes g5, there we go. In this position, if you go for this, bishop takes f5, and, this is looking very holdable for black all of a sudden. So, coming back, Magnus just takes this dangerous knight off the board, again in a low time situation. Again, this rook was always a danger, but again, we're blocking, and we get that from Magnus. Takes, queen takes, and now taking here, the queen takes, and we're establishing this pin. So is this pin totally deadly for white? Well, there's two ways to defend this piece. One's a little more active. Magnus plays h5, rook h5, and hits the queen. The other way would have been rook to e1, and this is obviously a little more passive. After h5, the computer wants to go queen g2, and here, and you're hitting. So, bring it back. Magnus played this more active move with rook h5. Abasov, of course, moves the queen out of the way. And now, queen h2 for Magnus. And this move is a losing blunder for Magnus. So why is this move losing, and what were the alternatives? So let's take a look. First of all, there's multiple ways for black to be okay here. the danger is that your back rank could be infiltrated by black. So one easy way to defend this is rook h1. And now there's no infiltration. But you still have this. So if queen e8, you're still going, either here or here. And you're just sitting under this pin and you're not going anywhere. So Magnus didn't go for that. He's still pushing for a win here. So again, what were other moves here? King c3 or king b2. And the idea here is, again, you're simply getting your king out of trouble. If the queen's able to come in on the back rank, the king itself is covering these squares, now all of them. So it's simply getting the king to safety. So here, again, we still have to deal with this pin. And it's not super comfortable, but white is simply holding this. But the problem here, after Magnus plays queen g2, excuse me, after Magnus plays queen h2, black has a winning move. If you want, take a couple seconds and see if you can spot Abasov's winning move that he missed. If you don't get it, just remember that Abasov also missed it. So alright, Abasov missed queen f1 and Abasov is now winning. So why is this winning? Well, the danger for white, it's two things. One, this rook really wants to come to e2, but the rook has another avenue to this square. Because for now, say queen d2, and the rook isn't getting here. But the thing is, the rook also has g6. And now, say rook h2, and you're just defending the second rank, queen g1, and you're getting ready to hit this the king from behind. So king b2, check on a1, king a3, and this bishop is gone. Nice sequence there. So what are the other dangers in this position? Is there any way for white to actually hold the fort? If we come here, for instance, well, again, you're getting this check right away, and you're losing here. Sorry, you're losing here. So that's not going to work out. If again, queen f1, queen h3, and if you're losing this, so now you're down a piece. So, how does white withstand this? And the answer is white can't. White can't withstand the pressure after this move. Again, if you just go here, the rook is coming in, and this is over. So this is a totally winning tactic for black. But Abasov did miss the move. Abasov basically changed the move order. He goes rook g6 right away, now threatening queen f1. But here, of course, Magnus can interpose on the f-file, and that's what Magnus does. Magnus plays bishop f4, and now queen f1 is no longer available. So the best here for black was actually queen g7, still threatening this. Bishop to b2, now blocking. And the black queen is still coming in, and here you basically have to come in here. You have to allow black to take this, and now queen b2, and here this is a draw. This is just going to be a dead draw because white's winning here, and then it's 3-on-3. So black definitely had a draw in hand, but here Abasov goes a little bit astray with this rook move, and the problem is now Magnus plays bishop e3, and this bishop is now defending f2 while attacking this pawn. So this bishop is improved now, and this king is much, much safer. The square also, yeah, the black queen can't get on this diagonal so easily. So bishop f5 from black. Now we're loading up again on this pawn, which has been weak for so long. And of course with that move, we're simply allowing c5 to drop, and Magnus takes it. And now, you could see a scenario where maybe the white queen is getting in, and these pieces are coordinating on the dark squares. For now, queen g6 from black, making white defend this pawn, seemingly. Well, the best move is actually to play king b2. You let this go. And here, bishop a7, bishop a7, bishop a7. Of course, the threat is the queen coming in. But if you take this, it's queen c7, and this is checkmate. So black has a problem here because black has attacked this pawn. Black has spent time attacking this pawn, ignoring his own issues, and the problem is this pawn is not even in danger. That this problem is not a real problem. The white king can just move, and Magnus does that. He plays king to c3. So, what now from Abasov? Here, according to the computer, white is winning because, again, this coordination between the king and the bishop. So how does Abasov save this? Well, he plays rook e6 here, and this is completely losing now for black, and it's the same idea. Although now, again, the white white rook is not coming over because this bishop is still here, but you can still take this. You can still take a7. And the problem now, here, it's this check. Right, and we're just winning. So, this pawn is essentially just hanging. And again, there's no good way. Again, it's this mate. This is mate. So Magnus could have taken there. But he didn't. He plays rook h4. And this is not a good move for Magnus. He loses much of his advantage now. And it's simply because now this rook is no longer menacing the fifth rank. On the other hand, the rook is no longer under threat of this queen and this bishop on a light square. But this rook is no longer participating in the attack immediately on this king. So it's still winning for white, but it's much less. The advantage is really dropped here. And here Abasov finds a very strong move, the best move according to the computer. And it's simply bishop g4. And now this rook is just out of the game. This rook is simply out of the game now. Of course, it doesn't do anything to protect this king. But the queen could come in now, f4, threaten this bishop, you could get h5. But now you can slowly get this rook back out. And, maybe the rook is coming here. Maybe the rook could have been, maybe the rook wants to come here and open up on the b file. It would be very dangerous for this king, but you're at least getting this rook back into the game. By the way, here, the computer wants to trade this off, and for black to try and hold this position, a pawn down. Should be winning for white, but white has to play this carefully. So, coming back, Magnus takes now on a7. Now he takes on a7. And you might say, well, the same elements are in place, except this rook isn't coming in, and that's right. And that makes all the difference. So here, taking is bad. Taking, and it's still lost. Because now, again, it's rook g1 check, and it's this bishop falling. But the other problem in this position is that this king is totally wide open. And because this king is wide open, the threat is perpetual check. Note also, if this king comes back, you're getting hit, skewering the king-queen. So, the move here that draws, that ensures a perpetual for black, is queen g7. So why this move? Let's say bishop d4. We're good, right? We're attacking the queen. Queen g5 now. Queen g5. And now what do? This queen is of course threatening to come and check on c1. And that's a big threat. That's a big threat if you just do nothing. You get queen e2 here, and wherever the queen goes, that's mate. So, this is a massive threat. How do you stop it? It's not easy to stop. You can give up the exchange. The computer wants to go here, and you're going for this kind of trade, but again, here it's already a perpetual. It's queen c1, b4, c5 check, takes, queen e3, d4, you following along? Rook c6 check, king b5. Ooh, sorry. It's king b5. Queen b4 is actually losing because you're getting checked on the dark squares. Stand on the light squares. And now the king has to go in for this, because otherwise the queen is going to get in and mate. So, a lot of danger in this position. What's another way for white to get out of this? What about coming here? And this is now allowing white, this is still ending up in a perpetual, and the reason is king takes now, and you're opening up this square for the queen. So, c5, protecting and checking. The queen can take here, king b7, and again, these kings are so open, you are going to end up in a perpetual. That's what the computer is already calling for. There's just no way. There's no way to mate this king without dealing with your own threats. So we see the importance of the black queen being able to come over to b7 and get this check. Abasov, again, had the right ideas in mind, but he plays a completely losing blunder here. He plays queen f6. And now, after king b4, this queen is not coming to b7 to check. That's the difference. So we get rook e5 from black, again attempting to get something on this king. Also, immediately blocking this diagonal, because again the queen is threatening to mate here, coming in on b8. So here, simply d5, d5. Again, this mate is threatened. So we get the check here, but simply c5. Simply c5. So blocking the check, and now this rook cannot move. No matter where this rook moves, it's this checkmate, and it's over. So black stumbled into that at the end, but again, he was one square away from securing the draw. Again, he had the win in hand, and here, again, he has the draw. It's just maximum mobility for the queen to draw this. What are some more moves here? Queen c2. Again, it's rook e2. If you just move off this, you move on to the second rank, it is over. So really your options are quite limited. What about d4? So here you would get rook e3 check, king b4, and again it's the same idea. Here, the only saving move for white is actually to take. Because if you don't take here, I don't know, you just, let's say, I don't know, you try and run with the king. Queen e7 check. c5, again, hoping your king is now safe. It's still rook e2, and, no matter where you go. So you're losing the rook there. If you go here and you keep defending the rook, it's queen d8, and you're lining up the king. So, yeah, this queen g7 move, just very powerful, and this looks really good too, and you're still attacking this rook. Just keep this rook attacked, attack the king. But, again, in retrospect, it's easy to see this move with the flexibility here was what was called for. So, yeah, heck of a game for Abasov. Just very nice play. He may be kicking himself for a long time. If he wins the candidates, then he probably won't care, but just queen f1 here, queen f1. King queen d2, rook g6. It's a huge problem. Yeah, you have to defend the second rank and your home rank, your first rank as well. Yeah. Again, if here, just king b2 first for Magnus, keep this defended, get the king tucked away, and it makes all the difference, So, yeah, that's it. Well, thanks again for joining me for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you gave you a little bit of a flavor of really just how strong Abasov is. This guy is the real deal. Don't let his rating make you think that this guy can't play with the best in the world, because I think on his best day, he could beat any of the candidates. Will he? Probably not. It's a marathon, and he doesn't have experience in these situations. But he's a very promising young player. Gave a great effort here, and again, he had the win in hand. So, yeah, I appreciate you coming along for the ride, taking a look at this game with me, and stay tuned for more previews of the candidates tournament coming up soon. Until the next one, be well, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.